Hello and welcome to Auto Shenanigans. My name is John. How the devil are you? Have you had a good week? Thank you very much for joining me for another episode of Forgotten Racetracks. Today we're near the town of Diss in Norfolk. Diss gets its name from the Anglo-Saxon word for ditch or embankment. Giggity. I'm on the site of the former RAF Fersfield. This airfield was constructed in 1943 with a runway length of 1,800 metres to accommodate heavy bombers, and at the time up to 2,000 personnel would have lived on the site. The airfield was allocated to the United States Air Force to operate, and one of the more notable events that occurred here was Operation Aphrodite. This was a secret plan during World War II to fly B-17 bombers via remote control and take down key enemy targets. In theory, the plan was quite simple. The aeroplane would have been packed full of explosives, and then the pilot would take off as normal, fly to a predetermined point before bailing out to safety, and then the rest of the journey be continued via remote control. The missions were a little bit hit and miss, and it wasn't long before the idea was deemed unfeasible. In two instances, the aeroplanes didn't even make it out of England, with one crashing in Orford and the other exploding over Blytheburg. But what's this got to do with racing? Well, f*** all really, but I thought it was quite interesting. If you agree or disagree, leave a comment below. Moving on, we've come to look at the Fersfield race circuit. It's not perhaps a very well-known race circuit, but what started as a small club-level race circuit grew on to much bigger and better things. In early 1950, the Eastern Counties Motor Club was formed, a group of keen enthusiasts looking to use their cars for motorsporting sport activities, which is another way of saying we want somewhere to thrash the shit out of our cars without fear of being arrested. With many redundant airfields in the area, they set about finding somewhere to organise their race events. They decided that Fersfield would make an excellent impromptu racetrack, and in April of 1951 they held their first club-only race event. Having tested the waters, they invited several other automotive clubs to partake in an event that consisted of 9 races. It wasn't the glitz and glamour of Formula One perhaps, but a more wholesome grassroots type event, and even so, they still attracted up to 8,000 spectators. Racing continued throughout 1952, but at the end of the season, the RAC insisted on £10,000 being spent to make the track safer and more suitable for racing. This amount of moolah was too beaucoup for the Eastern Counties Motor Club, so they abandoned the racetrack. It wasn't the end for the Eastern Counties Motor Club though. They moved up the road to a small airfield called Snetterton. Yes, that's Snetterton, the now massive racetrack. It was actually the Eastern Counties Motor Club who began racing there. They later organised the British Saloon Car Championship, which today we know as the British Touring Car Championship, or BTCC. Not bad for a bunch of enthusiasts from Norfolk. Back to Fersfield, and today most of the land is used for agriculture. The runways and perimeter roads that made up the race circuit still exist, but vastly reduced in width. And if you weren't aware of the previous activities here, you'd think they were just access roads. Quite what the original track layout was seems to be open for debate. However, having looked at various sources, I think the track layout that makes the most sense is this one. Now at this point, I'm not really sure how things are going to go. Obviously, I've written the script in advance of filming today's episode, but when you're dealing with locations such as this, it's not always obvious as to whether you can access it via car, on foot, or if at all. So with that in mind, we're either going to take a trip in the car and try to drive a lap, or we're going to explore on foot. Good news, everybody! It would appear that we're going to be able to take a trip in the car and do a lap of this fine race circuit. As I mentioned, there are varying opinions on what the original track layout was, and there's little evidence to draw any proper conclusions. However, they all seem to suggest that the main runway was the main straight, so I think that's probably a good place to start. Okay, so heading in a clockwise direction, we're going to head up the main straight before coming to a tight right-hander. That quickly becomes a long sweeping right turn that leads onto the back straight. As you'll have seen on these satellite images, the straights are quite long, so I imagine one could build up quite a lot of speed. As we approach the end of the back straight, it's almost a tight right-hand hairpin turn to get onto the main straight, and then of course up to the start-finish line from there. A fairly straightforward circuit with not a lot of technicality to it, but I imagine in the 1950s quite a lot of fun. So there we are, everyone. That's the story of Fersfield Race Circuit. A short-lived racetrack, but I think it played quite an important part in motorsport history, because if it wasn't for Fersfield Racetrack and the Eastern Counties Motor Club, we might have never had the BTCC and Snetterton racetrack. Thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. If you like this film, there is a button specifically for that, and you might be inclined to subscribe for more content like this. My name's John, you've been watching Auto Shenanigans. This is Forgotten Racetracks. I shall see you guys next time for another exciting episode. Have a fantastic week, so see you then. Bye! Why do I sit on the floor? It's soaking wet. Anything for an angle. Dickhead!